Patches and the very special diagnosis. Meet Patches the giraffe. Patches lives at home with Mum and Dad in the grasslands in Africa. Patches loves playing with the other animals, going to school and finding the very best leaves to eat. Patches is quite a normal little giraffe who likes doing normal giraffe things. But one day, the family got some big news and things didn't feel quite so normal for a while. Patches and family had gone to the hospital to see the doctor. They didn't mind going. Everyone has to go sometimes, and the doctors and nurses were always friendly and kind. Even better, there were lovely drawings on the walls that Patches loved to look at. While Mum and Dad were busy talking to the doctor, Patches wasn't really listening. The little giraffe was too busy looking at the colourful artwork on the walls. But then the doctor said something that sounded important and Patches' ears twitched, eager to listen in. The grown-ups were talking about something called a diagnosis. What a funny word, Patches thought. I've never heard of that before. It sounds complicated. What did it mean? The doctor turned to look at Patches and said, "Your diagnosis is something called neurofibromatosis type 1. Huh? What's that? It didn't explain anything at all. Now they were just two very funny words that didn't make much sense. Patches couldn't even say neurofibromatosis. We call it NF1 for short because it's a very tricky word to say, said the doctor. Well, that still didn't explain anything either. Poor Patches felt confused. What was a diagnosis? What was NF1? What did it all mean? Patches had lots of questions, but the words just wouldn't come out. It feels like they're all stuck in my throat, thought Patches. The butterflies in my tummy too, and my long legs feel wobbly too. This did not feel like a normal day. Luckily, the clever doctor seemed to know that even though Patches hadn't said anything, there were still lots of questions. So they started to explain some more. NF1 is a condition that makes you a little bit different to some of the other animals. It can cause brown marks just like the ones you have on your skin, they said. Patches couldn't decide if being different was a good thing or a bad thing. It was kind of a nice feeling, different and special, but it wasn't so nice to feel a bit alone and worried. Patches asked if anybody else in the family had NF1, but it turned out Patches was the first one in their family. The doctors explained some other families, the mum or dad could have NF1 and pass it on to their children. The doctor explained just like some parents could pass on their eye colour or hair colour, sometimes they could pass on a diagnosis too. And even though there wasn't anyone else in Patches' family with the diagnosis, there were lots of others who had NF1, so Patches definitely wasn't alone. Maybe one day they could talk or even meet each other. That would be so fun. Meeting new friends was so exciting. They would have such a lot to talk about. They all have a very special diagnosis. So, NF1 means I have some brown marks on my skin and some new friends who are just like me, Patches asked. This doesn't sound too bad after all. That's right. It also means you'll have more visits to the hospital too. NF1 could cause some other changes to your body, so we'll have lots of clever doctors here to look after you. They will keep checking to make sure that you are staying happy and healthy, explained the doctor. And that was that. After a not quite so normal day, Patches went home with Mum and Dad and the new diagnosis, and things mostly went back to normal. Patches played with the other animals in the grasslands, learned lots of new things at school, ate lots of yummy green leaves. That stuff all stayed the same, just as before. But other things had changed too, After learning about his big funny whiz, diagnosis and neurofibromatosis, Pat just went to the hospital regularly for some special appointments and was happy to see the lovely doctors and nurses lots and lots. But the very best change of all was making some very special new friends, just like the doctor had said they might. Thanks to having NF1 diagnosis, Patches were now part of a very special group full of very special NF warriors, just like Patches.